You've heard that the Bhagavad Gita is one of the wisest books ever written. You've also heard it's got caste discrimination in it. Lines about women, about lower castes that sound wrong to a modern ear.
The only problem with this book is this supports Varna Vyavastha. And that is the reason Ambedkarites are generally against Gita.
You are handed two doors. Defend the whole thing, including the parts that should never be defended, or throw the whole thing out. Neither one is honest, and somewhere you already know it. I've stood in front of those same verses and felt it. And I think both doors are wrong for the same reason. They're both reading the book flat. Both assume it has only one layer. It has two. And once you can tell them apart, the Gita stops being either a sacred rule book you have to swallow whole or an old scripture that is wrong for the current times. It becomes something you can actually use. That's this video. Not whether the Gita is revealed, but how to read it without lying to yourself in either direction. I'm learning the Gita by making these videos. The AI age questions, how to act when you can't control the outcomes, how to want things without them running you, how to find your own path when just get the safe job is a vanishing option. I'll get to it in later videos. Today is one thing, the move that makes all of that readable. The Gita's habit of going from the small and local to the universal. Let me show you with an example. Take yajna, sacrifice. In its old form, it meant a Vedic fire ritual. Ghee and grain poured into a flame, priests chanting. Take that literally, and to a modern person, it seems outdated. Hardly anyone is keeping a sacred fire to run cosmos, except maybe Nambudiri Brahmins in Kerala and some attempts to revive it for modern times. But watch how Krishna actually uses the word. Chapter 3, verse 13.
यज्ञशिष्टाशिनः सन्तः मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषैः भुञ्जते ते त्वघं पापाः ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात्.
Those who eat what's left after the yajna are freed from all wrong. Those who cook only for themselves eat only sin. Givers and takers. That's the line he's drawing. Then the very next line, verse 14, chapter 3.
अन्नाद्भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्यादन्नसम्भवः यज्ञाद्भवति पर्जन्यः यज्ञकर्मसमुद्भवः.
He's saying from food beings are born, from rain food, from yajna rain happens. So same word, but now it's not the ritual, it's the whole cycle of nature. Action brings rain, rain brings food, food brings life. One verse, a fire ceremony, the next, the give and take that runs everything. The word moved from the temple to the universe in just 2 lines. And the gods Krishna says to feed aren't little kings in the sky wanting flattery. They are the forces that hold the world up, like sun, rain, the nature you live on. You don't make the air in your lungs. You don't grow today's food, invent the language you think in, or build the road you drove on. Every second you live on things other people and other forces made. Yajna just means live like you know that. Give back into the system carrying you instead of only taking from it. So a dead ritual turns out to be a living law, truer now than it was then. Nothing alive feeds only itself. That's the move. Even if you think the fire is the layer that doesn't belong to the current times, the law of giving is the layer that lasts. Read it flat and you see a dead ritual. Read it for the layer underneath and it's still true. Now the hard one, the one people use to criticize this book. This is from chapter 4, verse 13.
चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्यकर्तारमव्ययम्.
This verse means the four orders were created by me, according to one's nature or personality, guna, and one's thoughts and actions, karma. Though I am their author, know me as the non-doer, the unchanging. The fourfold order is Varna: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, four ranks, and the divine voice says, I made that. Elsewhere, the Gita ranks the order and has lines that sound like women and Shudras start a bit lower. Read flat, it sounds wrong, and I won't pretend otherwise. It is wrong to turn a book for all humanity into a charter for just one small part of a society. And this is exactly where both flat readers go wrong in opposite ways. The defender reads it flat and ends up defending or explaining away all the unfortunate things that happen in the name of caste. The critic reads it flat and says, burn the book or at least those pages, like this guy. Now watch the third way. Aurobindo doesn't flinch from it. He names it himself: the comparative spiritual disabilities of Shudras and women, and admits that, pressed literally, these lines deprive the teaching of its universality and limit its validity for mankind at large. That's the case against the Gita, written by one of its own defenders. Then his answer, in his words, and he says, but if you look behind to the spirit and sense, and not at the local name and temporal institutions, we see that here too the sense is deep and true. Look at what the verse actually rests on: guna and karma, your qualities, your personality, and your actions, not birth. The principle underneath is that each person has an inherent nature, a swabhava, and right action expresses that nature instead of imitating someone else's action. The fourfold division was one society's concrete, time bound attempt to organize itself around real differences between people. The caste system was the form that belonged to its time. The principle that lasts is, know your nature, act from it. Don't imitate someone else's. The Gita's word for it is swabhava, your own law of being, and it holds it as better than paradharma, someone else's role in life, even when others' role looks more impressive or appealing. And this idea of swadharma isn't only an Indian one, which is part of how you know it's the universal layer and not local decoration. James Hillman called it the acorn theory. Each person carries an inborn character straining to grow into itself. Howard Gardner mapped it as multiple intelligences in a book Robert Greene often recommends.
There's a book I recommend for everybody. It's Howard Gardner's Five Frames of Mind. It's helped me immensely. The idea is he talks about 5 forms of intelligence.
Strip the labels, and it's one point that keeps reappearing. People aren't interchangeable, and a life built on someone else's design quietly starves you. Here's the fair challenge, and it's the one that should worry you, so I'll meet it head on. Every apologist for every uncomfortable sounding scripture says the same thing. Don't take it literally, the deeper meaning is beautiful. It's the universal escape hatch. So why can't you say my explanation for these verses in the Gita is also just an excuse to make them sound pretty? 2 reasons. First, I didn't invent this reading and bring it to the caste verses to rescue them. Krishna, the god, does it himself to his own ideas first. You watched it with yajna. Before we ever reached caste, the book took its own ritual and reached past it to a universal law on its own. So reading the caste verse the same way isn't a trick I'm importing. It's the move the text already ran in front of me. Second, the honesty test. An excuse is something you reach for only when you're cornered. A reading is something you apply everywhere. I don't go looking for the deeper layer only on the uncomfortable verses. I read the whole book that way. The ritual, the battlefield, the comforting verses, and the uncomfortable ones get the exact same treatment. The caste verses get no special rescue. The flat layer falls off it the same way it falls off yajna. And what's left underneath has to stand on its own or it doesn't. Here it does. Quality and work, not birth. That's the difference between reading a book and making excuses for it. One is selective and only shows up when you are embarrassed. The other is a method you run on every page. The harm from the caste system was real. It was wrong, no softening. But is the Gita to blame for what caste became? I don't think so. What the verse actually says is that your standing depends on your qualities and your actions, guna and karma, not birth. So the rigid hereditary system of caste is a departure from the line, not the line itself. That I can show you just by reading it. Why the rigid version 1 is a long disputed history, and I'm not going to adjudicate here. It needs serious study and debate. What I can stand on is the narrow claim. The verse says quality and work, not birth. The hereditary cage is a betrayal of the line, not the line itself. So here's the thing to actually carry out of this. Next time a line in any old book makes you flinch, don't defend it and don't burn it. Ask what falls off as the dead layer and what's still standing underneath. Then run that on every page, not just the embarrassing ones. That's the difference between reading a book and making excuses for it.